Are we ready to go?
Yeah, I've started recording.
Lovely. All right, well, nice to see you all. Thank you for joining me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rachel Green. I used to work in Lincolnshire actually as a careers lead in a small MAT, and now work with the Careers and Enterprise Company as an education manager. And they've asked me to come and speak to you today about governor engagement and the who, the why, the what, and the how. So we'll start with the who. Who are careers linked governors? If I can get my slides to move on, there we go. So who are they? Well, in many schools and colleges, they don't even exist. It's not a requirement to have a linked governor, only a recommendation. And the Careers and Enterprise Company and the DFE recommend that schools appoint a linked governor for careers, and we'll explore why later on. But who's the best person for that role, and what do they do? How can they help with wider governor and SLT engagement? So in order to add value, the right person is really key. And ideally, this will be someone who has already the respect of the governing body as a whole, someone who has really good business links, and someone who's not afraid to challenge as well as to support. But we all know if you already do have a careers linked governor, it's quite often simply someone who's volunteered or potentially been volunteered. So we'll explore later how to maximise this relationship, whoever it's with, or indeed how to establish a relationship with governors in the first place. So the role of a linked governor. What does the linked governor do? If you don't know and the governor doesn't know, you're not going to get the right person for the role. If you're able to, speak to your head and the chair to explain the purpose of the role, and then they can potentially offer that opportunity only to those who are actually in the best position to support and those who want to support. It's important that the person allocated to the role wants it and understands it, and as a consequence of that becomes someone who's willing to be knowledgeable and proactive with this. The governor guidance produced by the CEC outlines the official role of a linked governor, and that's outlined on the slide that you can see. However, for a careers leader, the role is about having an ally, someone who can be supportive in the development of careers education, someone who can mean that you're less of a lone voice, someone who can represent and challenge you. It's a critical friend role, really. And that critical friend can drive forward the strategic approach to careers and keep it high on the school and college agenda for the benefit of the young people you work with. They can also be the voice of the community and local business, re-emphasising the need for skills development and awareness of routes into industry. I have some example resources that I'll share with your ECs later on from a MAT, and that includes a sort of job description really for a linked governor and a checklist for linked governors to use when visiting a school or college. So if you're interested in something like that, do speak to your EC afterwards and I'll make sure they've got those. They'll also go onto our resource directory soon. So why do we need a linked governor? Well, why are the governing body useful to us as careers leads? Being a careers lead can be quite isolating, as you know. You can feel like the only person who actually recognises the value of quality careers education. So it's really essential that you have allies in the staff, in SLT, and within a governing body to make things happen. Having a linked governor who can really understand in more depth the intent behind your programme and represent your perspective at governance level is key. An ally in the governing body can help encourage wider stakeholder engagement and collaboration. Governors come from a range of backgrounds, as you know, and like an enterprise advisor, they can bring an awareness from these different perspectives. Ultimately, schools and colleges are held accountable by governors, so if we can help governors to see the added value of careers education, we can make it a key part of any school or college strategy. They shape the strategic direction of careers, and if the quality leadership is there and effectively challenged by the governing body, this will have a positive impact on young people. So what do all governors, but particularly a linked governor, need to know? Well, obviously, they need to be aware of their statutory duties. They have a key role in ensuring that the school not only meets their legal requirements, but is also equipping their pupils with the tools and knowledge to make informed choices about their futures. So they should be ensuring that the school complies with its statutory responsibilities that I'm sure you're all aware of, the appointment of a careers leader, but I would suggest one who's actually appropriately enabled to do their job. And if they're not, the governors should be pushing to ensure that the careers lead is able to deliver what they're asked to do. Compliance with the Baker Clause. We've actually just seen our first Ofsted inspection through where the failure to meet the Baker Clause has been explicitly mentioned front and centre in the Schools Requires Improvement report. If that's something that you feel would be useful ammunition for you, do please speak to your EC, and if they don't have that link, I can send that to them. They also need to be sure that they're publishing policy statements on the school's website, and they need to be showing a commitment to the delivery of independent and impartial guidance. So if you don't have any contact currently with your governing body at all, these are really great places to start, making sure that they're actually aware of statutory requirements and expectations. Perhaps you could ask them to support in ensuring that your website is compliant, and we have a resource that can support you with this on our website, a sort of audit for your website. So what else is it important for governors to know? It's really important to ensure all governors have an awareness of the points that are on the slide here. The Governor Guide produced by the CEC covers all of these points, and I'll signpost you to that later. If governors don't fully understand the requirements of the careers strategy and how prominently this sits in the new inspection framework, and the role of the careers leader as distinct from a careers advisor role or a careers coordinator role, how can we expect governors to really recognise its significance to them? It's crucial that you are enabled an opportunity to communicate in some way with the governing body. So if you don't yet have time slots with the governors or SLT, then think about using briefing papers or reports or updates that you can submit with a regular request for regular time slots with them. Explain that you want to be challenged, explain that you want to be supported. Be polite and persistent with your requests to the Clerk of Governors and the Chair. Make an offer maybe to present to governors about the careers strategy and their role within this. If you speak to your enterprise coordinator for support with this, I'm sure they'd be happy to help. And alternatively, email us at education@careersанdenterprise.co.uk if you want some more help. Sorry, .com, not co.uk. We've also developed a slide deck at the CEC, which you can adapt to suit your needs if you did want to do a presentation on these sorts of things to governors. Obviously, it's important for governors to have an awareness of the benchmarks and the fact that schools and colleges should be working towards them, but they need to understand them not just in terms of progress against the benchmarks, but why are they important? If governors can understand the potential impact of these benchmarks on their students in their schools and colleges, on the potential impact of the skill shortages they face as local business people, that will help you to secure buy-in. So have a think about which benchmarks the influence and support of governors could impact on most for you. Where's your greatest need? Make sure you sell that benchmark's potential reach. So for example, if you're struggling around benchmark 4, explain the benchmark in a way that shows the benefits for your students, for the school's results and attainment levels, for the behavioural engagement levels and impact, and think about the local economy. And if governors can see that wider impact of the benchmark and how it fits with the school priorities, the more likely they'll be to support and challenge leadership if you're not being able to deliver it. So try not just to get hung up on the terminology of the benchmarks, but explain the potential impact and the impact on the students and on the local economy, which obviously the governors are a part of. So sharing information with governors, ideally schools and colleges should reach the point where information is being regularly shared. And this slide gives an overview of the sort of information that you could share and when. There's no right or wrong, but this might give you some ideas. There's a huge amount of information here for a governor to absorb, and it can be quite overwhelming and potentially off-putting. So you don't want to lose them before you've even begun that relationship. So as I said, when I was referring to the Gatsby benchmarks, Consider what's most important for them to know and understand. For me, I think that's all about your intent, why you're doing what you're doing. What are you trying to achieve for young people, combined with an appreciation of that statutory duty? The rest will come. So now we come to the really key part, the how. How will you ensure engagement, and how could you maximise that impact? So let's have a think about how to engage them. I spoke to some network colleagues who've given us some really good quotes here. They've already managed to build up some really good governor engagement, and these are just a few things that they've suggested. The same themes kept emerging from them about being visible and showing impact. So networking. If you're not having any luck getting a slot on governing board meetings at the moment, can you find other ways to establish these relationships? Think about who is on the governing body and how you could meet them. Could you have a presence at events where governors will be at and make careers really visible at those? Another quote I didn't include on the slide was, "Get out of the cupboard careers leads are often put in, and shout about the impact you're having." I don't know about you, but my office was a cupboard with no windows, hidden away in the school, and I really had to make a point of getting out and being visible and getting myself known to governors. Perhaps look at your list of governors and see if there are who the parent governors are on there. Which year groups are their children in? Could you potentially invite them along to an event or a trip for a year group? Make a point of speaking to them, explaining to them what you do and why. And can you help them to see that careers is more than just a university trip and a one-to-one talk once in their school career? Get them engaged in what you do and why you're doing it. If you can get governors to meet employers and providers, and if they're part of your events, it gives your role and theirs a little bit more context and meaning. This whole experience then would help them to appreciate and comment more effectively on strategy and policy. Maybe find out who other key governors are. For example, the SEND governor. Could you work with the SEND team in your school or college and together approach the SEND governor to discuss how careers education could be adapted to support these students specifically? What are the good news stories that have real impact on things that matter to governors? So NEETs and destinations data, for example, are really key things that governors are interested in. So when you have a good news story around NEETs or around destinations data, use that potentially as a way in. Depending on how the relationships at your school or college work, you could share this with the head and ask if you could share it directly with governors. Or potentially, if your relationship is slightly different, you could email the chair of governors with this great news story with the head copied in. After all, as my colleague from the Northeast said, shy bairns getting out. Governors are volunteers. They're there to support the school or college and the community as a whole. They do want the best education possible for young people. That's why they're doing the job they're doing. And potentially they're interested in their own children or grandchildren. So you could appeal to that side of them, or appeal to that side of them where they're thinking about being accountable for their performance. They all work in slightly different ways and are driven by different priorities. So it might help you to know who the key people are, and that might help you to shape your approach. So, COVID, it's meant a massive change for education. I think there's finally a recognition that schools and colleges do far more than get students through exams. There's a recognition in the press and in communities at the moment that the work that you do in preparing young people for life is vital. Is there an opportunity here for us to harness this and to help show careers education as a force for good? Perhaps consider preparing an update or to deliver a virtual presentation to governors that shows how careers has supported young people and their families during lockdown. Include any positive feedback you've had, engagement levels or impact measures you've collected. Help to set out for governors and SLT that careers education could be part of the solution in terms of addressing the fear around the NEETs that are going to potentially be with us as a result of coronavirus. Parents want to feel they have options for their children. They want to feel that it's not only them that wants their child to do well and get employed at the end of their education journey, and that's where we can really help. And we need governors to understand that we can help them be a part of that. How can we help take away that fear of transition, the fear of unemployment? And how can careers education help to support the most vulnerable students and families? Obviously, student welfare is really high on the governing body agenda. So can we help them to see that far from banishing careers education for our year 10s when they go back in year 11, we should be celebrating it potentially as a method of recovery from COVID-19? And maybe governors will help us win that support from SLT to keep careers high on the agenda for our year 11s next academic year. For me, Benchmark 1 is a clear vehicle for governor engagement. Whether this be a new version of a vision for the post-COVID world, or just establishing that very first clear vision for careers where there isn't one currently. Obviously, one of the requirements of Benchmark 1 is that need for direct reporting into the governing body. And that's a key point to raise with the clerk to governors or the governors themselves if you haven't already got an opportunity to report into them. But bigger than this, governors play a crucial role in working with school or college leaders to shape that vision and direction. So if you haven't already got that link into the governing body, Benchmark 1 could be the way in. In light of the current situation, you might decide that it's necessary to readdress the careers programme and the intent behind it, at least short term, to change it for your current year 10s and current year 12s potentially. Ensure that it's fit for purpose and meeting the needs, those really specific needs for those cohorts. We need to be raising its profile as part of the solution with governors and SLT, and that will help in turn with whole staff buy-in and help you to achieve other benchmarks in a more meaningful way. If you haven't already seen the Benchmark 1 webinars that the Careers and Enterprise Company delivered a few weeks ago, and this approach appeals to you, then do visit our Benchmark 1 resources page on our website. You'll find a link to all the recordings and a huge number of resources to support with the delivery on Benchmark 1. The link is on the bottom of this slide here if you receive the slides afterwards. Another thing to think about is presenting your programme. So on this slide here, you can see an editable student journey, a progressive journey for students. So we should be celebrating your careers programme as a well-structured, progressive journey for your students with clear outcomes for each year group or stage of learning. And that's just another way you can shout about what you do to governors. So this could be a more informal approach to governors to engage interest and potentially gain a link governor. So this editable template has space to show the intended outcome for each year group on their journey, as well as an overview of the opportunities open to them in each year. And it's available on our website with the same link that was on the previous slide. And this could be, as I say, a less formal way of introducing those Gatsby benchmarks in your journey towards meeting them. So a quick recap on the how, the potential starting points. If you haven't already approached your clerk to governors about getting a slot, is this something you could do? Explain the statutory requirements of the governing body to them and the role of the link governor, or maybe think about it in another way, an impactful good news story. Maybe that's more likely to get your foot in the door. Choose that approach if that works for you. Networking. Careers leaders are generally networking ninjas. So continue to do that. Make careers as visible as possible. Find ways to make yourself and your work known to governors and create allies on that governing body. Use your enterprise coordinator or advisor to help you to get that initial link, to build on your current relationship. They can bring that business element or the LMI or local skills strategy aspect to your conversation. They may be able to link you potentially with other governors who've already taken on the link governor role and seen the impact. Be positive. Focus on the good things and the impact that you're having, not the things you can't do to get that conversation started. NEETs and vulnerable students are rightly high priority for governors. So can you show how you're working to bring those neat figures down, or how you're working to keep them down? Do you have some ideas you'd like to explore with governors or SLT about improving outcomes for your vulnerable students? Can you put together a proposal to share with SLT and ask if you can take that proposal to governors maybe? There's a huge number of careers leads in our network, almost all of those who already have impactful relationships with governors were once actually governors themselves. It does always help to have been a governor or to be a governor, but I recognise that is an absolutely massive commitment. But if you do have that capacity, that's a great way of getting obviously in with the governing body, but make sure you don't become the link governor for careers. You need challenge, you need another perspective. So even if you do become a governor, don't be the link governor to yourself. So if you have already got a reasonable relationship with the link governor, or with the governors in general, how can we maximise that relationship? If you haven't already utilised this resource, it is a really good one to frame conversation and to move things forward. It is available again on our website. There's also an accompanying head teacher guide that was recently released, so if you haven't seen that, they won't feel left out, which is always good. It forms a really good starting point, giving the governor all the information about statutory requirements, as well as really drilling down into each benchmark with key questions that you should be asking, or rather that they should be asking of the leadership team. The online training sessions that we have as well, again via our website, I would highly recommend that governors have a look at this, or SLT members, any key staff involved in careers provision. It is modular, so they could dip in and out of various bits depending on what it was you were looking at. So if you did want to approach them, say around benchmark 1, they could just dip in and have a look at the online module for benchmark 1. So the other thing we could look at is when you're doing your Compass update. So whether you're updating Compass Classic or Compass Plus, consider involving your governor along with your EC, your EA, or any SLT members. That will help them to get a really clear picture of your progress, of the extent of the work that you're doing, the reach of the work that you're doing, and where you still need their backing and response. Don't be afraid to ask governors for help. I know some careers leads are a bit, ooh, it's a governor, but they're just like you and me. So please do ask them for help. They're a really great resource. Like enterprise advisors, they're a fresh pair of eyes. They approach things from a different perspective, and that can make a really big difference, especially when you're doing strategic planning. Utilize their skills, help them to recognize where their role is having a real impact on your work. They're really well-connected people. They're really experienced, so use this to your advantage. So just as a quick recap, as well as encouraging them to participate in the online training modules, one section at a time as appropriate, think about how you could support wider governor CPD, or any training that you're attending that may be useful to your link governor. Invite them to join you. Make sure it's clear there's no obligation, but the offer's there, and it shows that you're considering them and that you feel that their input is valuable. Invite them along to any careers related staff training you're doing. It helps them to stay knowledgeable and to feel that they're an integral part of something. Perhaps they would feel confident enough to speak at a staff training session, and that shows all the staff really that is being taken very, very seriously if the governors are also involved. Having knowledgeable governors is useful. Can be a little bit scary, but it's useful because it helps to really challenge and push you to deliver the best outcomes for your students. Involve them in events and trips. Again, no obligation for it, but it's an open invite to them. Positive experiences such as them maybe joining you and employers and students, say over a lunchtime, to have a conversation, gives them that good news story, that positive, warm feeling that they could take back to governors. They can sell how brilliant you are for you. It could be beneficial for them as well to have those networking opportunities with other local businesses. And it's a constant positive reminder of why their role and careers education is so valuable. Governors like to hear from governors, so enable them to sing the praises of the careers programme by involving them wherever you can. The greater understanding governors have of your programme, your intent and strategic direction, the better, especially when it comes to Ofsted. One thing though to really think about is the timetabling of your meetings and invites to events for governors. They need to be done well in advance. A big challenge for lots of careers leaders and governors is actually finding suitable times to meet, as schools and businesses work so differently. I'm hoping that now we're all so good at using things like Zoom, potentially that could really help that continued relationship with governors in the future. To maintain the relationship, I would suggest really you need to be meeting possibly 3 times over the course of the year with a link governor, perhaps incorporating your Compass updates. Obviously these would need to be scheduled well in advance. Don't meet for the sake of meeting, but it feels right sort of once a big term to give an update. Do ask for support from your link governor or EA. Their connections and experience can really bring a new dimension to your work, maximise what they bring to the table, maximise their links. They will have community links who could potentially support you in the delivery of some of this employer engagement. Finally, keep in touch with your link governor, obviously not every day, but at the end of each term, perhaps some sort of update, what's happened this term, what's coming next. It could just be drawing their attention to your usual newsletter rather than actually creating anything new specifically for them, so it's not too much extra work. Remember, with a link governor ally, so much more is actually possible. And with the support and challenge of a knowledgeable and proactive governor, careers education will be higher on your school and college agenda, ensuring the personal development of your students is valued, visible and embedded. So almost there. Next steps. What could your next steps be? So if you currently have no engagement at all with governors, could you send to your head and clerk to governors a good news story, a review of the year demonstrating the impact you've had, or showing what you've been doing to support students at this current time? Ask if you can come to the next governors meeting, a face-to-face or a virtual, to talk about careers. Find out who's in your governing body. Are there key governors you could contact to work with in the absence of a link governor, the SEND governor, a parent governor who may want to be involved in an event or trip or something like that for their child's year group? Share the governor and head teacher guide with the principal and the chair of governors, perhaps along with the role of the link governor, and ask if you can have time to discuss this role and the benchmark and the best person for that job. Whether you have a link governor or not, this could be a great time to revisit Benchmark 1 and get real governor involvement in determining the vision for your school or college, and perhaps use the template for the student journey to display your careers programme with clear learning outcomes for governor feedback. That's another part of Benchmark 1, getting feedback on your programme. So maybe representing it, offering it out for feedback would be a good starting point. Encourage them to do the online training and to join you in the delivery of staff CPD. Even let them know about these webinar series and see if they can watch some of the webinars that may be of interest to them. And finally, think about any of the events that you've got planned for this coming year. Where could governors be involved, either by coming along to learn more about what you do and its impact, but also how they could support and contribute personally or through their networks. The key thing is to be highly visible, demonstrating impact wherever you can and shouting about it. Be polite and persistent and push for governor engagement. After all, as my colleague said, shy bairns getting out. Thank you very much. I shall stop sharing. I've seen lots of stuff coming up in this chat, but I haven't had a chance to read any of it. So do unmute yourself and shout if there are any specific questions. I will make sure you get all of the links to the Ofsted training and the resources that I mentioned as well via your EC. Can't see anything specific on there. Hang on a minute. Yeah, I will send you the link. It's a school in Leicestershire I haven't got the link here, so I will send it to your ECs and they'll make sure you get it.
Rachel?
Yeah.
Just a quick question, as there aren't many others. I was just interested in primary schools and their, you know, are there any primary schools where the governors are getting involved in, you know, any careers work they're doing in?
Yeah, there are. There's my colleague is more of an expert on the primary sector with careers than I am, but yes, we hear a lot about schools in primary that are very much engaged. It's very different. It depends on the focus of the head teacher in that particular school as to whether they're fully engaged or not. There will be some really useful information around primary and careers coming out in the next few months. There's a platform with lots of resources on for primary. So if you're interested in that, just keep in touch and I'll make sure your ECs know about it.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have
I was going to say, can I butt in there to say that we're doing quite a lot of work with primaries around the Quality and Career Standard, not the Quality and Career Standard, Career Mark. So East Riding's got quite a lot involved and we've got others. So again, you know, we're working with primaries, and once they realise what it is, they do grasp it quite enthusiastically often.
Excellent. I think that there's a real appetite for everything in primary.
Yes, yes. And the youngsters are very much like sponges, but they are very enthusiastic to learn and even think about their futures. And some of the primary schools are doing amazing things. And I think, again, if it takes off in primary, secondaries will need to look very carefully, as I said, at what level their year sevens are coming in with sort of careers awareness.
Absolutely.
I'm the STEM ambassador coordinator for the northern bit of Lincolnshire, so I work with Alex quite closely. So, and I'm working obviously with primary schools a lot. So I'm quite interested in that overlap and how, you know, we can get these people from business and industry to go in and support both.
There's a great opportunity for transition.
Yeah.
Rachel's got a hand raised. Are you still there, Rachel?
Sorry, it was by mistake. Didn't mean to raise it.
Are there any further questions? No? Oh, it's all gone quiet. Well, thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. And I will send all those links through, including the slides Joanna's asked for as well. So I'll make sure they all go to your ECs for distribution. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Rachel. It was brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.